All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the LV Home Expert Show. If you guys are just tuning into the channel for the first time, just want to say welcome. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Also, we got a special guest today, Colt. We're going to be talking about commercial properties, buying your first apartment building. How does that process actually work? So, got my host today, Dan French with Guarantee Rate. What's going on, Dan? How's everything going?
Great. Loving it.
Damn, look at that camera angle, dude. That looks good on you, dude.
That looks really good, man.
With the lighting and everything, right?
Everything looks great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, how was your weekend, Dan?
It was great. I ended up fixing a table at my house. That's exciting, right?
Yeah.
Went shopping.
Okay.
You know, got some new pants.
Some new pants.
Some new pants, man. There's only like one size pants. Like there's a pair of pants that fits me right. It's called Lucky Brand.
Okay.
So I gotta buy those, man. Everything else don't fit me right. So.
Gotcha. So we got in studio today is Colt. He specializes in commercial properties, right? What's going on, Colt?
Not a whole lot. Thanks for having me. Just enjoying this nice weather.
Damn,
Vegas.
look at you, man. You looking sharp with that suit, dude.
Suited and booted.
I know.
Suited, booted, but horrible haircut today.
Nah, it looks good, man. I definitely do like the haircut, man. It looks really good on you.
They're trying to make me look young. So I'll take it. I'll take it.
Hey, dude, you dropped like, what, 10 years?
Easily. Takes away the gray out. You can't feel it. Yeah.
So how was your weekend, man? What'd you end up doing this weekend?
It was a rough weekend, man.
Really?
Rough.
Yeah, rough. Friday night got roped in at the country club to a wine tasting. And
Oh, really?
I was already drunk before I was invited. So it hit me. Those old guys they can drink. So.
Oh, really?
The tolerance level, huh?
Yeah. And Saturday I was just in bed most of the week.
Is that what you like to do, is drink during the weekends?
Yeah. I'd like to get out and do stuff.
Yeah.
But see, I'm old. I can't handle the
Man, you ain't that
drinking.
old. Dude, how old are you, bro?
37. But you know, in Vegas years, those are old.
Oh, I don't know about that, man.
Yeah. So, but no, good weekend. Beautiful
really?
weather, man. Beautiful weather.
Yeah.
Mid-November.
Mm-hmm. So I always see you always dressing out smooth like that, man. You're like one of the smooth dressers over here, dude.
I appreciate it. I try my best. Try to keep the focus off the face and
Your best. I don't know about that, man. You do look smooth, though. I can tell you that much.
Appreciate it. I should have dressed comfortable. Dan over here making me look.
Man, I'm just sweating over here. It's what happens. You know, you get all.
It's like the hot box over here.
Yeah,
Bunch of man juice up in here, right?
Yeah. You know what though? Your broker dresses pretty good too, man.
Oh, John?
Yeah.
He's
He's a good dresser, man.
Colt's a better dresser, though.
Yeah, man. John doesn't have anything. He's got better hair. His hair, he's prideful of that hair.
I wish I had some.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Hey,
I haven't seen you without a hat. Let's see it.
yeah, let's see that thing, man.
Wow. No, see.
Damn, that dude got a cul-de-sac up on that thing.
Look at that thing.
I'm gonna make a U-turn.
I'll put it down here like this today.
Looks good.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of growing it out, right?
Yeah, that's growing it out. That's like 3 months.
Usually. No. I'm right behind you.
So, like, when you get a haircut, Dan, I mean, how does that work? Do you like, hey, just keep the top long and fade the
Yeah, I don't
side?
even touch the top.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like, you know, if you see any little strands that are coming off, like little strays, cut those things off, man. It's maybe like 1 or 2 on the top. Everything else is give me a fade or a blend in the sides.
Oh my gosh.
The shorter the better, because then if it blends to the top, it makes it look like it's not as bad. You know?
Yeah.
So
You know what's crazy about a short hair? It's like you got to cut it like every 2 weeks, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can't just like leave it long because it just grows, and just the growing phase, it just looks ugly at that part. Dude.
Hey, you remember that show? What is it in Living Color?
Yeah.
Remember Homie the Clown?
Oh,
Homie the Clown.
That's exactly what. That was a great show.
Oh, it was great, man.
That
and then
was a great show.
who was on there? It was Jim Carrey when he did that whole thing with the pills.
Yep.
What
was the Fireman Dan, or what was he?
Fire Marshal Bill.
Fire Marshal Bill. What a great show.
Oh, you know who was hot on that show? Was Jennifer Lopez, dude.
She was on that?
Hell yeah, she was one of the dancers. She was kind of chunky, but she was still hot though.
That's where she got her start.
I know.
She's still hot. How
Dude,
old is she?
hell yeah.
Like 51?
She's
don't
up
know.
there. But I mean, look, she don't look
like
it.
50s.
But she's up there, but for sure, yeah.
I'm over at 37. I look like she's younger than me.
Yeah, but we're white. You're white? Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. Especially with this flash on me right now. Super white.
Well, that's good, man. You actually look good on camera, dude.
I mean, I just got my 28th birthday.
Just oh shit, that's not good.
Just
Well, I want to get into commercial properties and, starting the process on buying an apartment building, there's a lot of people out here that have owned a bunch of single family residents, and they're trying to move on to a different avenue as far as investing, because with single family homes, you can only buy like so many properties, right, Dan? I mean, like, how many loans could you actually get?
Well, actually, you can broker. What broker is outside conforming. You can actually go up to like 20.
Oh, really? I thought it was up to 10, dude.
No,
but that's conforming. I'm sorry.
Conforming, yeah. And that's mortgages. But yeah, I mean, if you can afford it, I mean, I haven't seen one that high, but back in the day, I had somebody try to actually pull something off. It didn't work.
Really?
It's like, he had like 16 or 17 mortgages. It's just, at that point, man, it's like, there's like a different level of how much you put in the application. There's so much detail and so much data you have to put in.
Yeah.
How many conforming can you have now?
Well, you can have up to 10.
Is it 10?
Yeah, up to 10. There's different, it's called reserves
right.
that you have to have based upon how many mortgages you have.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything beyond 4, then it starts to get a little different, starts to change.
Now, Cole, let me ask you this, man. What would make somebody go from single family residence to move on to commercial? What is the benefits for something like that?
Well, the benefits, it's a gradual progression, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, first thing you ever do as an investor is buy a house.
Yeah.
It's just what everybody's comfortable with. It's what they know.
The numbers are easier,
right.
basically.
Well, I bought it for this. I can rent it for X and Y and be done. So it's a very amateur move, but it's the move that everybody does.
And that's what I be doing.
Right. And well, because that's what that's
exactly.
your specialty, right? But what it does is usually people buy 1, 2, 3 homes, and it's like, okay, well, there is a lot of competition.
Yeah.
So now let's move to a 4-plex.
Yeah.
And they buy some 4-plexes. Again, tons of competition. So at that point, that's when it really turns into apartment buildings. And so the biggest change that you'll see from 1 to 4 units is you go to somebody like Dan and say, give me a loan.
Yeah.
And you guys underwrite it just like you would with a single family home pretty much.
Sure.
Correct?
Yeah.
When it goes to 5 units or more, it gets into a commercial loan.
Yeah.
And that thing is underwritten completely different.
Yeah.
And we can go into all that, but that's why people stick to those 4-plexes.
Yeah.
And then that leap goes into apartment buildings. And to be honest, that becomes kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Just the progression, right? That's their first move's always apartment buildings. Then once they get sophisticated in apartment buildings, they either stick to that or they move to industrial, office, stuff like that. So you'll see that progression. Single family homes, 4-plexes, apartment buildings, and then into more specialty,
like niches. Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to commercial, everybody just thinks there's only like one sector in commercial. There's so many different avenues in commercial. Can you kind of break that down?
Yeah. So there's a ton of avenues, and this is why you should know what your agent knows, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of people go to their residential agent and says, well, can you sell this? Technically they can, because they have the same licensing.
Yeah.
But there are different sectors. So you have the apartment sector, land, warehouse, office, retail, and then specialty, right? Like out here, specialty can be anything from churches to strip clubs to stuff like that. So, and people really focus into those. So the apartment one is one that you'll see a hybrid of, but you have certain people that, these major hedge funds, they want 200 plus units. They won't go look at 50 units. So when you start finding that niche, you really got to see, well, who am I competing against?
Yeah.
Because there are some major money players that will come. These real estate trusts, these REITs that you hear, which maybe some people aren't familiar with. I know all 3 of us here are familiar with, but these REITs can go in and they'll drive down a cap rate. And we can go over what a cap rate is and everything like that. But it's just the gradual progression of investments. Single family homes to 4-plexes to apartment buildings.
Gotcha. So now when it comes to apartment investing, should you be looking at a 5-unit? Like if somebody's just getting started I mean, obviously you have to look into a unit where it actually makes sense. And what I mean by that is, do you want to start off with 5 units, 10 units, 20 units? Where's that threshold where if I'm starting, where I'm actually making a decent amount of money?
I mean, honestly, you should look. The biggest issue, and my wife always goes to me, why wouldn't you buy that house?
Yeah.
Why won't you buy that 4-plex? Why wouldn't you buy that 10-plex unit?
Yeah.
You should look at them all the same as an investment. You know, people will go and buy homes and say, well, I bought it because it was 10 grand under comps.
Mm-hmm.
Who gives a crap? What is it bringing income-wise?
Yeah.
So when you look at it, the lower stuff will be a less risk, so it has a lower return.
Yeah.
And it's a lower return because it's less risk, so you have so many people and a lot of uneducated people buying this stuff, so they drive down the properties. I mean, you know, for example, you can buy a little 10-unit apartment building in Las Vegas right now. It's not in the best area, but for $1 million.
I think it's overpriced.
Right? It's crazy overpriced.
For $1 million?
Yeah. But what happens is,
Dude, cap rates are like at 6%, right?
Yeah, they're like 5.5%, 6%. And these California people, they're selling a house.
What if somebody bought that though, and they were like, well, maybe I'm going to keep it for 5 years. Could they get that return on investment higher? Cap?
The unknown is right now. I mean, a lot of people might see this later on. This is during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And what's going on. So I've always looked at, and just so we can talk to people, what a cap rate is your net operating income divided into the sales price, gives you a percentage. What it is a capitalization return, which tells you how good of a investment it is.
Yeah.
You can look at stuff. I mean, you can look at stuff as cap rates, as your rate of return or rate of investments, or you can look at it as an IRR return. You can look at it as a 5-year projection, right? And if you've got I'm going to do a value add type of deal, we're going to do this, this, and this, and it gives my IRR, my rate of return in 5 years, X, then it gives you a different way of looking at it, right? But when you're looking at apartments right now, and so I live in Central Vegas. I live right by the Strip. If people don't know, it's not the greatest area, you know. So it's either got high end people or it's complete opposite, right? So when I go outside my gates and I see these things rent for $900 a month, these apartment buildings, they should only be like $700.
Oh, wow.
At best, right?
So are you saying that they're forcing the appreciation so that way they can sell it?
Well, they have, and that's why you really need to know what you're looking at. Yeah. When you go to buy stuff, is because it's so easy to mess with numbers, right? Yeah. You can make it so you're not calculating vacancies. You don't have a property manager in them. You're not taking the taxes on it. So when somebody comes to me and says, well, this thing's a 7.5% cap rate.
Is it really a 7.5?
I look at it, right? It's like 5.
What do you mean by forcing appreciation? What is that?
So here's the thing, and this is what I love about apartment complexes. So for a single family residence, right, the home is only worth what the value is, what it's going to appraise. Now, if you deal with apartment building, right, if commercials, if let's just say rents are at 500. But you know rents in those areas are around 700. So what you're doing is you're forcing an appreciation by going back into the property, right? Cleaning it up, right? Now you're raising the rents. You're stabilizing.
Like a flip, almost.
Well, it's not a flip. You're forcing the appreciation because you have to understand when it comes to commercial building, it's actually like you're really buying a business.
Yes.
The bank wants to see how much income is coming in and how much income is going out. And that's where that cap rate is very important because if a cap rate is at 6% and you're able to raise it by 200, now if you bought that apartment complex, just to say for 500, because you did that forced appreciation, now it may be worth 900,000. And that's what I like about apartment complex because you can go into a down market, but you still can force the appreciation to go up. But on a single family residence, if the market tanks, then you're pretty much screwed.
The house tanks, right?
Yeah.
Right. The property tanks.
Am I correct? Go.
Yeah. So on commercial and investments, there's different, how we look at stuff and how we grade stuff is on an A, B, C level, right? So when we talk about there's a building, it's beautiful, it's brand new built, it's got all the gadgets and everything, that's considered an A class. Okay? Sure. And then you have B class buildings, which is your average building like we're sitting in right now.
Right.
Good neighborhoods, nice places. Then you have C class. Okay. And C class is your bad areas, your lower income areas, whatever, however you want to, look at it. And those should be, the cap rate should be on you look at them as investments. So your cap rate should justify what you're buying. Okay. Right. So like a higher risk, a higher C class, you're in a C class area, a lot of risk, your cap rate should be higher. Mm-hmm. Where if you're buying an A class office building or apartment complex that has 200 plus people in it, they all got, medium income of 60 grand, or, they are good tenants, that's a low risk. So when you look at all these brand new, beautiful apartment buildings, people will know, you get these real estate REITs, they'll say, I'll buy that. I don't care if it's 4% return, because it's so low of a risk. So that just drives up a value of it. Now, if you go and buy what he's talking about, it's kind of a flip, right? We call it a value add opportunity. So when you go look at something and you say, okay, well, going rate's, $800 rent. If I can buy this thing, people are in there $500, I can make that. So you price commercial 3 different ways: on replacement value, on the building how it stands with other comps, or as an investment. And as an investment, you should always look at stuff like, when people bring me stuff to buy, I go, I don't care how beautiful it is, as long as there's not deferred maintenance, right?
Like, how much money is it going to make me, right?
What's it going to make me? Yeah. So what Chuck is talking about, where you can put in value add, you take 500 to 800 over 10 units or whatnot, start cutting some cost on it. Yeah. You can make your net operating income really go up. And then you can sell it for, 6%, 5%. You can make, 30% on your money. So that's what he's talking about. And that's what we call value add.
Yeah. So if somebody comes to you and says, look, I've got a couple single family residents, I'm making some money, my debt to income ratio is good, how does that process get started? How does somebody actually break into that? Because I noticed it's kind of difficult. You actually need some money to make some money, right?
Right. So, and it goes back to the loan process, right? And that's why don't know Dan all that well, but you probably don't touch anything 5 units or above.
No.
Yeah. So
it's all commercial.
Your stuff, your lenders will stick to only residential and go to commercial. And the reason commercial, again, that they look at a different value. So you need more down payment. That's why people will buy 4plexes still, because they can go to Dan and say, hey, I'll buy this, and they don't care.
Yeah.
But a bank will underwrite it. Yeah. They will look at, does this thing make money for me?
Yeah.
And so what's going to happen is either you're going to have to leverage the properties you have, put them up as collateral.
Yeah.
But you're also going to put a bigger down payment, 25, 30%, maybe 50%, depending on how they look at it. The bank might not even like the investment. Some of these will drive. So you got to go, just like on residential, your first stop should go to a lender.
Yeah.
Once you talk to an agent, say, and your agent will send you to certain lenders. Dan can handle VA, FHA, conventional, anything to do with a home.
Yeah.
He's a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Commercial is different.
Yeah.
You got guys that can do SBA 504s. You got guys conventionals. You got investments. You got people that specialize in apartments. They don't like apartments. So everybody's different. So you need to talk to somebody that knows what they're doing in that area. They'll direct you to a lender.
Gotcha.
Those lenders are going to say, look, it better be a B-class building, or it needs to show that it's a multiplier of X, where they'll want that it's making 1.2 on it. So you start there, and then you start looking at buildings. You'll never walk a building, right? It's not like a house where you just say, can I go walk it and take a look at it? You'll drive by it, or you'll do a Google Earth on it, look at it. But you just want to see the paperwork. So you'll get rent rolls, stuff like that, and do due diligence.
So what you're saying is, as far as like an example here, as we see, so this building right here, it states that this is a 12-unit apartment building with a cap rate of 6% downtown. It's $2 million, which is, I think it's way overpriced. That's just my opinion. Right. And this is what I'm starting to see a lot now. Investors are coming out here, rehabbing it, I just don't even know how the banks are going to finance these things, and you're going to have a trailing 24, right? Or trailing 12, right?
Trailing 12, which people might not know what that is, right? Yeah. So a trailing 12 is giving your operating expenses and your income for the last 12 months.
Yeah.
Why that's important, especially like in times today, you don't want to buy something. They'll show it from 2019 through 2020.
Yeah.
The income's going to look amazing. But if you ask for a trailing 12 right now, that income ain't going to look like that.
And banks are going to require all that to underwrite the loan.
They're going to and that's rent rolls. They're going to want to see how long the lease is.
Yeah.
You know, and commercial and investment, I could go on for 10 hours.
I just got a couple of questions.
It's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
So if you had a property like that had rehab that needed some work, right? Is that a Class C?
Yeah, if it's that area, that area was Class C 10 years ago.
Right.
You know, we're
moving on.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. And again, we could go into a half hour on how to look at things like that. That would be more of a Class B building and a Class B area now. Now, 10 years ago, when it was nothing but
so like you're basically going to a bank. This is what I'm getting. There's different levels of banks. And what I mean by that is how they lend the money. Yep. And you're basically going into business with that bank.
Oh, yeah.
That's really what's happening.
Yeah, and they will not – sometimes they'll draw it over a 30-year term like that, and they're getting better now. The loans have really changed, and the loans change, right? Like, for example, I won't say banks' names. There was one bank that would not touch anything under $1 million.
Yeah.
I brought them $900,000. They wouldn't touch it.
Is this a recourse or non-recourse?
Non-recourse. Okay. But they just didn't have programs for it.
Yeah.
So I stopped using them on small stuff because out here you can buy – little office condos for $500,000, 600. So I never took them to those people. All of a sudden, run into the guy 6 months later, and they're like, "All we can handle that we're good with right now is $500,000 to $1 million." You're like, "Wait, you wouldn't touch anything really under $3 million?"
They hold the note though, right?
Yeah, a lot of them do. And they'll sell them off, and they do the same type of stuff, and you know, investors will back it and hold it and everything like that. But they
majority of the time,
they'll vote on it. Sometimes, depending on the banks and whatnot.
And I noticed that it's not like a 30-year loan. It's like a balloon payment of like 10, 12, and amortized for 30, which is great. Right. But
even it used to be 5 years.
Oh, really? So I feel like that's just risky because if the market tanks, then, I mean, you got to refinance. How are you going to bail out of that deal?
You got to refinance or you've got to sell it, right?
Hard money or something. Yeah, well,
find somebody.
Chuck, I want to ask you, you brought up recourse and non-recourse. What is that?
Okay, so basically a recourse loan is basically you're going to be on the hook for the debt. A non-recourse is, look, I'm putting a big chunk down. The bank is taking a risk. I can walk away from this deal. They take over the property. Yeah. My credit's fine. I'm good.
Your stuff is all non-recourse.
Yeah, all non-recourse.
No, recourse.
Like on
recourse, right?
Yeah. Yours is recourse. Yours is non-recourse.
Sorry. But on those, like, just there's times you'll have to put collateral up. They'll come after your homes. They'll come after. That's why a lot of big business people, a lot of big business people don't own their homes. Maybe their wife does, or it's under LLCs or stuff like that, because they can come after. And same thing on leasing, right? On commercial leasing, same thing can happen. So there's a lot to it, and we won't get into that. We'll stick with apartments. But the banks, they'll sit there and say, that building was ugly. I don't want to touch it. Especially smaller banks.
You know what I realize is apartment buildings here are about 30 units and below. They're really mismanaged by mom and pop shops where they're just pocketing the money. There's a lot of deferred maintenance, right? Those are they're very hard deals to even get finance approved because they don't file taxes on it. Yep. And what happens is you get the deferred maintenance. And the only way to buy these type of deals is if you get a great deal where the owners no longer want the property. It's mismanaged, right? They're hemorrhaging money. You go in, you buy it for cash. You buy it at a great price, right? You know rents are low, and that's where you do the add value. But once you do that whole process, now you got to wait like 24 months to stabilize this property to force the appreciation up. Am I correct?
Yeah, you'll have to stabilize properties, and that's why you'll see stuff where it's like, well, why they hold it for so long? They got to stabilize the income, show it. But they're mismanaged, and you can get away with it, right? Like I sold one for down by Stratosphere right before this COVID hit. That it was a horrible place, but the guy made a lot of money that was buying it, and the banks said, you're going to throw 50% down. We're okay with not having a good trailing of
so the down
income.
Payment kind of offset it.
Yeah.
When you said deferred, what classifies that as deferred? Like where does
deferred maintenance can be like you got AC units that are on their last legs, roofs that are on
really that's small, huh?
Yeah, like just stupid stuff that these guys. What happened in Vegas, and it happened throughout America.
Yeah,
we can talk about Vegas, and it really, people can take this from what happened in Vegas and use it in most places because we were the epicenter of housing crash.
Yeah, we encompass a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
I should have bought more freaking property.
Oh, absolutely, right? How crazy. For example, I sold an apartment building, $500,000. The guy did absolutely nothing to it. Actually put it in worse situation. Sold it for $1.2 million, and now that thing would probably sell for $2.1 million.
Oh my god!
Like how crazy is that?
I know.
In a 10-year process, right? And there's just it was just a different time. But these guys, they were okay, and they took money and would just go buy stuff. And they knew that it doesn't matter if they didn't care about investments at that time. They knew Vegas wouldn't be. You couldn't buy a $500,000 apartment forever, right? You couldn't buy buildings like that forever. So they really mismanaged it, and they didn't know what they're doing, and that's why you don't have it. And they'll still make clear a lot of money. But now when times are good like this, you better be a better investigator on your financials and stuff like that, because I'm seeing stuff sell that I just shake my head at.
Yeah, I don't believe like what they're selling for. I mean, they're getting away with like over $100,000 a door. Yeah. And some of these 20-unit apartment buildings, I mean, they're only given about a 6% cap rate, but they've already maximized the potential of that property. So that just doesn't make any sense. No. So I guess you just got to find out what type of investor you are. I mean, if you're okay with a 6% and you're looking for something that's completely rehab, that makes sense. But if your end goal is to do add value, to do a 1031 exchange, to scale up from a 30 unit to a 60 unit, I mean, that's the real goal here, right?
Yeah, your goal is, if you don't know what 1031 exchange is, you need to talk to your CPA, your accountant, do some. Your goal is, you shouldn't want paid taxes, capital gain taxes. That's crazy. That will
those
kill
could be pretty high too, right?
Oh yeah, 25%.
That's right, crazy, man.
And so that's why these ozone opportunity zones everybody's trying to go after right now. But that's a whole nother thing with whole different attorneys involved in it. But 1031 is you're deferring taxes, right?
Yeah.
Just so the people out here know. So what you're doing is you're saying, okay, well, I made $300,000 off that purchase. You're deferring paying your taxes, that capital gain tax on that $300,000, and putting it into another property. You can do it with artwork. You can do it with cars. You can do it with a lot of stuff, which a lot of people don't realize it. But
I didn't realize that cars and artwork.
Yeah, if you
I'm gonna draw my own stuff.
You're out there buying rare Ferraris and Lamborghinis and stuff. Oh, there's a whole different level of money that you'd be just shocked by, right? Like it's eye opening. But I was one of my buddies. He sold a piece of property, made $30,000 in LA in 1980s, right?
Oh, wow.
Now he's deferred that maintenance for so many years. This was the 80s. I bet he's got $4 million of deferred investments, right? So you should always learn how to do that. But the reason why we talked about, and you asked this, Vegas, why is everything 20 units, 30 units? Why are they older, right? Like if you notice, it's always downtown area. It's older. You're not finding them in Green Valley, Summerlin. What happened was these guys were able to build these doors for $60,000, $80,000 a door up in these nice areas. Well, in 2004, 2006, those things could sell for $300,000.
Wow,
that's crazy.
So they go spend a couple of thousand each door to map them off, subdivide them off, and sell them as condos. That's why half this stuff in Vegas, when I moved there, I'm like, that's not a condo, that's an apartment you're buying, right? Like it just doesn't.
So that doesn't happen anymore, huh?
No, though people are now doing it on office buildings, but that's why you won't see a 50-unit nice apartment building ever for sale in the good areas, because they're either 200-300 units that were just built right now, or they're smaller stuff that people just wanted to cash flow and keep. So that 2004 through 6 really changed the Vegas market. We don't have row houses like townhomes, right? I'm sure you guys get that on the residential side. Like, I want a super nice townhome, this, that, like Chicago does, or New York, or other cities. But
there's not a market for it.
Yeah, just Vegas is a very different market. It's a weird market. But on the apartments, these California people, they can only get 4%, 5%. that's going great. It's a going great thing, right?
Yeah.
Like going great changes. We'll see what it does next year, but going great for apartment buildings when the market was crashed was 10 to 13% you could get. So, now there's a going great, just like a going great price per square foot of a building. There's a going great for an investment. And like I said, these larger hedge funds, they won't touch anything under 200 units. So it's a weird thing where I always tell people sweet spot is like $4 million to $7 million, $8 million. And even then it's still super saturated with buyers, but
so you're saying it's still competitive at that price point.
Big time. I've got somebody right now I got $8 million. They want to place into an apartment building.
Yeah.
$8 million. They're 1031. So again, on 1031, you have a small amount of dates that you have to abide by. You can't just hold it and then buy something 2 years later, right? So this person's got to buy something by December 15th, and
I mean,
it's so frustrating, right? Because I know I won't. They could, but it's.
But what happens is they get taxed more. Is that what happens?
You buy stuff you shouldn't, right? So then it becomes, should I buy stuff that it is? Like I'm used to buying B-class nice apartments, and they're from out of Vegas into a smaller market that doesn't have the issues we have. And we're a small market, but we have the city issues, right? Like Vegas is a very small market, but we have the city issues. So I tell them, like, I can get you stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be an amazing return like that one we were looking at. They say 6%. I bet if we really looked at like the 3%. Thing, it's probably 3.5 to 4%.
So I guess the question, if somebody's in that position where they're doing a 1031 exchange, right? They're scaling up. Is it best to do that, going from like a 20 unit, right, where you're making 6% and scaling up, but you're only making 3%? Why would you do something like that?
Because you got too much money and it's such a low risk at that time, right? Like
great situation being right.
The situation. But to me, like, no, you shouldn't be buying a 3% return, right?
Yeah.
And that's what like Starbucks, In-N-Out Burgers, these freestanding buildings, they'll trade for 4% because they got 30-year loans on them.
Right.
Again, we'll get into it. But on apartment buildings, the larger you go, the less risk, right?
Yeah.
You can say the more risk too because of market crashes, but if you start losing 1, 2 people, they don't care, right? As a tenant, it doesn't matter. That's with your single family home, you lose one person. You lose 100%.
Yeah. Like if you got a duplex, now you're at 50%. You got a fourplex, now you're at 50%. If you have a 100-unit apartment building, right, you lose 10%. You still got 90 people paying your rent, and that's enough to cover, your costs, right?
Yep. And apartments are great because they are low risk. Everybody needs a place to live. When the market crashed, I was sitting on properties and people are like, let that thing go. I go, why? As an investment, I'm still making my money.
Yeah. So what does it matter if it crashes?
Maybe on paper I lost hundreds of thousands, but
what's the highest risk, would you say?
The highest risk is bad neighborhoods.
Okay.
Really?
Bad neighborhoods because at that point and I hate saying bad neighborhoods. It's such a bad term, right?
What about ghetto?
Yeah, but it is what it is. But
you're going to get fired.
Yeah, that is...
You just lost your license.
That is the first people to lose their jobs, right? Yeah. Like, that is the first people to lose their jobs, which is unfortunate. But at the same time, you can look at a lot of that can have Section 8 housing, which the government pays for, which those...
So you're saying typically on these like 200 units are more like white collar workers, right?
Yeah, I mean,
blue collar.
We represent a guy, right? And he's a perfect example of everybody's got some sort of investment that makes sense. He's an ex-NFL player.
Yeah,
you wouldn't know that. We had no idea he was. This guy, if you saw him, you'd think he has zero money. Like
we see a lot of that though, right?
Yeah. And so what he does is he's very fluent in Spanish. Mm-hmm. He's got a good connections with churches.
Yeah.
And he buys up these C-class buildings and he makes a fortune on them.
Oh, wow.
He makes a fortune on them because he knows how to manage them. So that's the bread and butter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's got a different what makes sense, right? There's people that will not buy anything that's not a certain type of industrial, or a medical office that has X amount of medical, or certain, like I said, these hedge funds or these REITs on apartment buildings, they want certain demographics that are certain, make certain amount of money, and they will say nothing under 200 units. If you brought them a great deal for 190 units, they wouldn't touch it.
Yeah.
So people are very, very specific.
Yeah.
And that's why it's better to do larger deals and easier to do larger deals than the smaller deals, because you're just getting, Dick and Jane from California that are like, I heard that anything that's a 6% cap rate's a good. They don't look at it. They're buying something that's really a 5.5 cap rate, 5% cap rate. They're not, they don't even know the areas, stuff like that. So that's why I said sometimes you can saturate a market with just buying stuff you shouldn't, right? And I see it all the time with residential, because people will send me residential deals and say, "Well, you should buy this," or and I'm like, "Why?" Well, it appraised for this, but it's worth that. I'm like, okay, well, your rent, like I made 5% on that. Like, no thanks,
So let's talk about like when you're looking at a property for this example here. So this is a 12-unit building, right?
Yep.
Completely rehab for $2 million, 6% cap rate, and I'm looking at this as I'm buying this for the first time. I'm like, yo, this thing looks tight. It looks clean. Looks like they did a really good job, right? So when we talk about numbers, and this is the most important thing because you're basically running a business. So like if you look here at the property facts here, they're asking, $2 million, $167,000 per unit, which is just crazy.
That's a small 12 units.
Yes.
Probably
now,
all studios.
How do we really identify that this thing is actually a really, a 6% cap rate?
So a lot of times you're going to have to sign, non-disclosure agreements and stuff like that.
Now, what is that real quick?
It's just a thing saying you won't disclose what the information you're about to see. And, you got to be careful on that kind of stuff, because if you do disclose it, they can track where it came from.
Oh, really?
Right? Like you disclose, it happens a lot more on the commercial stuff than apartment stuff. But, you disclose leasing amounts and stuff like that. But on something like this, you'd reach out to them, right, and say, hey, I'm interested. Can you send me an operating agreement? Or send me financials, or what? Everybody names it different throughout the United States and throughout the world, right? But you'd look at this and say, well, that's a gorgeous property, which it is. They did a great job with it. But as an investor, two things would turn me on about this property is it's new, right? You can tell somebody put all new stuff. So you're not going to have any deferred maintenance. It's a low overhead, it looks like. The second thing is the location, right? Which a lot of people don't realize. Okay, well, these locations make a big difference. You can go spend the money and be right in the heart of a good location. And in most places, those locations will stick, right? We know Summerlin, Green Valley's always going to be very nice areas, right? But you can look at different locations to say, well, maybe there's an ability to take these and it turns into from a C class to a B class to even to an A class, right? Like downtown Las Vegas 10 years ago, that building you wouldn't even want to touch, right? Like that was a bad, Fremont Street was bad 10 years ago until,
they've cleaned it up a lot.
Well, especially that Tony Hsieh.
Tony Hsieh threw about,
$350 million into
something crazy.
You know what's crazy is
Vegas.
I actually bought some properties down there in the tail end. And this is when I was buying like properties, for like $18,000. But I had to put like, 50 into it. But man, I wish I would have bought more.
Oh yeah, he was smart, right? Like that, and
dude, he was real smart.
And that's the thing, when you get these big investors, they'll sit there.
They control the market, dude. Basically,
especially someone like him. When you go throw, honestly, you could buy boarded up apartment buildings for like $500,000. You throw couple hundred million into a small. We're talking about a 3-mile radius.
I would give anything for that now, dude.
I want to say this though. You think that with all that money, they moved the needle with a lot of stuff that's going on, but they probably have some insight too that there's going to be money, potentially money, like something they're seeing.
That's the whole thing, right? The rich guy gets richer because they know stuff that's going on that we don't, right?
And that's you ain't in that crowd.
I'm not. How do I get there?
It's funny because there are stuff, right? Like you will hear. That's why. On top of like NDAs, as a buyer, sometimes we send out NDAs that you won't disclose who's buying it.
Yeah.
And if you really want to be secretive, then all of a sudden attorneys are buying stuff from people, right? So when the raiders are buying land up or stuff like that, they might use an attorney. And now, of course, everybody knew that the raiders were.
Yeah.
But if someone's going to do a major development, they'll go lock down properties before they start closing on them and try to do it quietly. Well, they'll go absorb city blocks at a time. And maybe they do a due diligence period that takes them longer. That guy's like, I'll pay you $1 million for your thing worth $700,000.
Yeah.
But I need a longer. And the guy's like, I don't care. I don't even know who's buying it.
So they try to lock it up for a longer period.
Yeah, they lock it up so they can just absorb, because the last thing you want to do is start competing against what you set a value at, right?
Yeah.
Like Raiders Stadium, that was B class, super low class, B class, C class warehouse spaces, right?
Yeah.
That you could buy a warehouse for $1 million 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Raiders announced they're buying the land across the street. Well, now you don't care that warehouse for $1 million. Now the land's worth $4 million,
exactly.
right? So now they're selling stuff $4-6 million over there, because it will now go into mixed use retail, living, apartment, stuff like that. And same thing with anybody. So if you got an insight, that's why people get mad at these politicians, because some of these politicians are tied to certain stuff, and they'll go buy land off of, they know there's going to be a new
development coming up or something.
And
that's why they were trying to say, like,
system.
where's it going to be? And everybody's like, well, it's going to be over here. No, they're going to want to make it. So there's actually lobbying to make it, like, obviously, because they're going to benefit from it.
Right.
So
everybody benefits and they can do it. So it's
crazy.
So that's why you just want to say, okay, well, I have a little faith in this area, and maybe you buy an apartment there. Right?
Yeah.
And maybe for 2 years you just keep the same tenants in there paying $600 a month or whatever, and you don't put any money into it. Mm-hmm. Maybe in 3 years, growth happens.
Yeah.
So you bought something for going great back then, and not the nicest area, for 9-10% cap rate.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, now you're sitting on it. Your cash flowing anyways good. Then you let 3-4 years go. These B class areas absorb this area.
Yeah.
And now the B class going great at this time is 6%, 6.5%. So you don't have to sell it at 10%.
Yeah.
Which people don't understand. The lower the cap rate, the more money as a seller you're making. Mm-hmm. So that's the end goal. So you take this from a 10% return down to a 6% return, you're making a ton of money just off that. But you put money into it and raise those, $600 a month rents, put them at $1,200. I mean, you can make crazy money on this kind of stuff.
Damn.
But you need to know the market. You need to know what's going on. That's why
it's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah, it is. And that's why I was watching a finance guy go talk to a group of investors, and they're like, we don't mess with the stock market because you don't know what's going on. Yeah. It's so hard to. And he goes, just follow Warren Buffett. Follow somebody, right? He goes, I don't get how you guys do real estate market. Mm-hmm. He goes, there's people that know what's going on, and that will make it where it's hard to go against a good investor. I mean, a good investor that has money is very hard to go through. So that's why, these things, when you find off-market deals or even stuff that hits the market, if they're good deals, a lot of times they're
gone.
They're maybe not as good as deals.
Really?
Because they would have gone already, right? Same thing with some of these houses. If they're invested in stuff, I know a lot of agents that will buy these houses before they go to the public, right?
You know what I noticed about this niche? It seems like everybody kind of holds on to their own pocket listing, and you have to speak to some broker.
Yeah.
He may know somebody that may know somebody to get you a deal. Right. So it's just not like you jump on the MLS. I mean, how does somebody actually find a really good deal?
Honestly, there's no MLS, right? Yeah. And it's kind of the Wild West, the commercial. Like I look at, I'm around all you guys residential guys. You guys have guidelines and rules you guys follow and stuff like that. And to me, I would love that. Yeah. Where you'll find stuff that, if it's a good deal, a lot of these guys won't return your calls because they're trying to double end it, or they've got a thing. So I would look at who's doing stuff in the market you're looking at. Yeah. Go to them and say, how do I get on your list? Yeah. Because I know you're going to push it to your list before it goes public. Mm-hmm. Or you can start looking at who's bought stuff and is cash flowing like crazy. You know, somebody, again, these guys that bought stuff for $500,000, you know, it's worth $1.5 million. Maybe go directly to them. You know, that's easy to find public records to see what people pay for, you know, how long they've been holding the note for. So,
but you probably have a lot of people talk to you, and they probably talk a good game. I mean, like, how do you weed that out? And like a person like myself, how do I get in front of you to say, hey, look, Colt, I'm actually a real buyer.
Right.
I need your help. This is my first time, but I can get the money. I got the money.
You got to show the money.
Yeah.
Money talks.
Okay.
Now, when you get to larger stuff, money just doesn't talk, right? You go and people want to see your portfolio, submit a package with an offer. Like, there's times that you get to certain levels of real estate.
They want to see your criteria.
They want to know that you know what you're doing.
So you're basically getting a pro
off the market. Yeah. They don't want to, you know, sell you then sell something. It turns ugly last second. It screws up the, you know, value of their property. You scare tenants away. So the larger it goes, it's a package.
There's a lot of these investors like hoard properties and hoard, like, so that they want to control like a market or a sector.
Yeah, the bigger people will, right?
The bigger people.
That's not as common as you would think. People they feel comfortable with what they're investing in, right? So that takes us back to why people buy houses for investments at first. When honestly, I won't say it because you'll get mad at me as a residential agent, but
that's fine.
But they're not that great of investments, right?
Yeah.
Like, and most residential agents don't know how to break down. You're one of the few. Most people say this is, but they feel comfortable. Yeah. So people will do that.
I do appreciate that because this is my show and all. You know?
No, and but it is, right? And that's why you can tell somebody knows an investment, right? Know a cap rate. I got into it once. A guy was trying to sell an apartment building. He goes, well, the cap rate's 7.5% or 6%, and this was online. And I text him, hey, can you send it? I'm intrigued. Can you email me? And I go, well, what's the cap rate below? He goes, I told you, 6 to 7.5%. And I'm like, okay, it's one number.
Yeah.
It's a number.
Yeah, pick one. Hurry up.
Pick one. And then all of a sudden, everybody ganged on me.
Yeah.
And this is through social media being stupid, right? And I hit him back like, hey, no, it's one number on DM. Because I wasn't trying to make him look stupid.
Yeah, why would you do that?
But all these agents started getting on like, oh, this guy don't comprehend. And I'm like, you guys, you're talking about cash on cash return, which is completely different than a cap rate, right? So people will know that as good agents will. And good residential agents will know that. People will. So, but they feel comfortable with that. And what will happen is you'll see some guy keep buying up the same neighborhood. It's because he's comfortable with it, right? He's either not really trying to hoard the neighborhood. It's just a comfortable investment.
That's his market. That's his niche, basically.
And he knows it. Yeah. And a lot of these guys, it's crazy. You'll see people just to make a cap rate look good. They'll take tenants from their other building, say, hey, I'll give you 2 free rents. If you go 2 months of rent, go live in this one for a year. Yeah. And they'll take it. Yeah. And then as soon as it sells, they'll call the guy and like, hey, come back to here. They know what they're doing. They have connections, right? Yeah. That's why I said it's very important to look at the cash flow, who it is, what it, like I was going to buy one for one of my clients. And I go, this is too good of a deal. Yeah. Too good of a deal.
How do you decipher through all that?
Well, this one was, and it was crazy. This is it was downtown, and I go, give me the rent roll, which tells you who's renting it, how much, what's their term, stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, I've sold buildings in this place, and you got every sort of nationality living in these places, everything. This rent roll came back with such and such Anderson, such and such Cooper, such and such Nichols. And it's like, okay, these are all...
Something's going on.
Something doesn't make sense, right? Like, these are all just common movie names you do. Yeah. And so I'm like looking at them. Then I start seeing signatures start looking the same. I mean, total fraud, right? And I called the guy out, and he goes, oh, I thought I told you. And I go, what are you talking about? And this is a big agent, residential agent, right? In town. If I said his name, you guys would know. And he goes, oh no, we're making up the numbers so you can go get the loan.
Oh gosh.
What?
Yeah. So he's sending me all these fake numbers. I'm like, oh my God.
I don't want to be a part of this.
Yeah. So I canceled the deal. My guy's like, I'll still buy it. And I go, I don't want to be involved in this. But he put in an email that he was trying to defraud a lender, right? Like that's how crazy it is. So, but that's why you see people that will just buy the same areas. They just feel comfortable. They know how to get those, like that NFL guy, right? Like he knows, he goes to the Spanish speaking churches and he says, anybody need a place to live? And you know, they're all great people. Maybe they don't have papers. Maybe they don't have the job to show it. And he cash flows like crazy, and he's got great tenants.
Okay, so walk us through the process. So let's just say somebody's already approved. You see their bank statements. You know they got, $500,000, whatever it is. Now you start sending them properties, and you're like, hey, this one makes sense.
Right. So
what happens from there? Like, how does that process work?
It's very similar to a residential deal. Okay? And this is why residential people feel like they can do commercial investments and stuff like that, because it's the process of offer, inspections, closing.
Are the timelines the same?
But the timelines are different. You don't write an offer, you write a letter of intent.
Okay,
right?
explain that.
A letter of intent is really where you're taking the big bones of an offer and you are trying to negotiate that stuff out, right? And this is on all aspects of commercial buying and investment buying and even businesses. So it's the price, the address, the terms, how long, what inspection periods, close dates, stuff like that. So, it's mine's 2-3 pages usually of a thing. Once you get that letter of intent agreed upon, then you go to the contract.
Yeah.
And contracting commercial is different than residential because we don't have a template.
Yeah.
Right? Like you guys, I could tell you what's paragraph 9 on a purchase agreement. And you could tell me what it is, right? We don't have that.
So you have attorneys, or you're writing it out yourself?
Then you have the sellers usually pick the contract.
Oh, okay.
So you send that over. Well, then you as an agent technically are not supposed to what we call redline it. Okay. So then you renegotiate the contracts.
Yeah.
So you send them to attorneys is what you're supposed to do. And what happens is they go to attorneys and we call it a red line. Yeah. We say, hey, we don't like that paragraph in there because you only agreed to the big bones of the contract. Now there's so many little, right? You go from a 4-page document of agreements to maybe only a 12-pager or maybe a 50-page contract. Same thing with, on commercial leasing.
I got a question. So you're saying there's a contract after the intent, right?
Correct.
Letter of intent.
Yep. The real contract.
Right.
The real contract.
Now are you saying that attorneys draft their own letter, or there's no like uniform letter, or not letter, but contract that goes out? Like there's different styles of contract.
Every deal I do is completely different.
So the fundamentals there, as far as the inspections, the due diligence.
Right. But it's the same process, right?
Yeah.
So once we come across an agreement on a contract, well, then that's when your due diligence period. Instead of what do you guys do? 10, 14-day due diligence, right?
10 days,
we're doing 30 days, maybe 60-day due diligence, and it can get longer, right? And during that period, not only are you inspecting a property, okay, so you'll have to, and that's when you usually get to see your purchase for the first time, other than the outside, right? And that everybody's different. Some people will say, if you're doing a big deal like any meeny miny mo, I pick that door, and let's go look at it. Yeah. Some people say, I'm looking at every door. Imagine trying to get 200 people to open up their doors in
Has that happened?
Oh yeah. You'll have to sit there and people yell at you.
How much is a home inspection for like a 20 unit?
The thousands.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
How long do they take?
40 days.
It depends on the unit and how big, right?
I'm
like a 10-unit apartment building will take you. They'll be there not like 8 hours.
Oh, okay,
9 hours if they're quick, right? There's there's other buildings like I sold a big office building that was a 3-day period, inspection. But so you have 30, 45 days to look at it. And that's where you have to look at documents, make sure the investments are good. Make sure you don't want to be buying stuff that everybody's lease is coming up in 2 months, because that's usually why people are selling stuff, because they know something, right? Like they either made enough money, they're happy with it, or they know they're going to be getting left with an empty building or units or stuff like that. So that's where you start looking at every lease, see who's got deposits, who doesn't have deposits, who's paying what.
So are you looking at every single lease then and calculating the numbers? Is that what you're doing on behalf of the buyer?
Well, yeah, I make them do it too, but I do it because I won't sell it. The last thing on commercial deals, usually we have attorneys involved at some point, right? Like the bigger deals, like I did one last year that I have 5 different attorneys involved.
Oh, wow.
Right. So I had.
How much does that cost for an attorney?
Oh, I mean, each attorney was probably $4 or $5 each.
Oh, these are guys that got big money anyway. That's small money.
Yeah.
Now, like, how much is it like the earnest money deposit on something like this, as far as like percentage wise?
They range, right? But 10 to 15%.
Oh, that's much higher than residential.
So if you're buying $1 million, you might get away with only 20% down, or or not 20%, like 20,000. Yeah. Some people say, hey, $1 million, throw $100,000, $150,000. So it just depends. I mean, there's not a set percentage. There's not a set really anything in the commercial game.
Gotcha.
There's
everything
industry
goes
standards, right?
Yeah.
But it's not like
it is like the Wild Wild West.
Yeah, the residential market. Like I said, I'm jealous of you guys because you got lock boxes. You have the MLS. You guys all abide by the same thing. Commercial is different, right? And so you have to do your due diligence during that inspection period. You might need to get environmental inspections, phase 1s, phase 2s. You might have to do soil inspections depending on where it's at. But also you're inspecting the paperwork. Yeah. And once that goes through, then it's the loan, just finish getting up the loan and closing, right? So it's very similar as residential, but you're looking at different things and you need to know what to look at.
Gotcha. Now, let me ask you this. As an agent, commercial agent, do you get paid from the listing side? And sometimes you get paid from the buyer too as well. Like, how does that process work?
Sometimes depending on the deals, right? Yeah. You guys make your X% usually on whatever. Yeah. If I sell a $1 million deal, well, yeah, the seller's usually going to pay me, and it's probably 3%. It's probably whatever. The higher it goes, the lower my commission goes.
Really?
Right, so
because you're making a boatload of money.
Yeah, like last year we closed on something around 20 million. Right?
Oh my god!
And everybody's like,
imagine that
3% of 20 million. No, I don't make. 3%.
Yeah, you was telling me about that. I remember.
I wish I made 3% of 20 million. No, I won't say what I make. I don't talk about that.
A lot,
it's not
but
free, right? It's not.
So do you go after the buyer? And the reason why I'm bringing this up,
bigger, you have to charge your buyers a lot.
Oh, okay.
You start looking at stuff at that point. Sometimes they'll say it's on you, right? Like at that point. So then you charge your buyer. So, and everything's different, right? Like relative, right? Like $1 million here is a lot more money than in LA, Hawaii, New York, right? So it's not like a set thing, but sometimes just as a buyer, you'll have to pay your agent.
Now, is that something that's going to be established with your buyer up front?
Yes. Yeah.
So that way they're aware?
Yep. And like I tell my people, you're signing this document, and I have mine, scaled where if it's this much and I don't get offered money, you're paying me X, right? And I tell people, we'll find out. And some agents, and that's negotiated, right? Like you guys don't negotiate your payments in residential. Commercial, they'll say, hey,
I do if it's too damn low.
Right, well, yeah, exactly. But for the most part, people don't. Right? Like for the most part, it's like, they're offering me this. This is what it is. So commercial's a little different like that. Like I said, for the majority of the case, it's super rare if I charge anybody commission. It's either because the deal's super tiny and I'm dealing, as a favor, and it's just, you put a lot of liability up as a commercial agent.
Really?
Right? Like residential, I could tell you your top 5 things you're going to run into as an agent, right? That's it. On commercial, every document's different. Every contract's different. Everybody's different. There's attorneys involved. Usually it's a higher amount of money. So
do you require an attorney with your clients, or some of the deals you're like, this is easy, I can handle it?
Well, the smaller stuff, right? Like they're not going to go spend money on an attorney. So I recommend strongly to every one of my clients to get an attorney, but you're not always in the position where you can just start spending money like that, right? And that's where it comes to, either you better know what you're doing as an investor, or your agent should. Right. And that's why I tell people, don't use your cousin just because he's your cousin as an agent, which you guys probably run across that all the time. And that's probably frustrating. Well, he's got a license. Well, doesn't matter. Just because you got a license doesn't mean anything. Right. And so that's why when I go to a listing appointment or to take on people, they drill me. Yeah. They drill me hard about what do I know, who have I represented, what have I represented. So you should do the same thing as buying. Like, hey, you sell apartments? Because again, people specialize. I only do apartments. I only do warehouses. I only do retail, right? So you got to make sure you know what you're doing. And this is a big investment. You don't go to your cousin just because he's your cousin and have him do stock trading for you. I never understood that as a real estate thing. They'll do it for real estate. They'll give you $500,000 to buy a house just because you're your cousin. But you go try to get $500,000 to invest, they won't. So, it's one of those that you need to ask your agent, what do you know? How many have you done? And walk me through. But the process is the same. Letter of intent, contract, inspections, the loan finishing up, closing. Right?
What about like management? Like, how do you transition from one management company to another if you go in that route?
Sometimes you can keep the managers, right? And some of these managers, they know the areas and they're better to suit than going and find an outside manager. And some of these management companies, they won't touch stuff, right? Like they're like, that apartment's not my cup of tea.
It's too hard.
You got to know, again, it goes back to interviewing them. You should interview just like you get interviewed for a job. Hey, what do you manage? Do you manage like properties? And you maybe don't want to pick the manager that's got the management right next door that maybe he's getting a little bit better percentage for keeping that building full than your building, right? So you got to look at stuff differently like that. But management, and that's something you should look at when you're doing your inspections, you know, is who can manage this, because there might be buildings that most people won't touch. You know, if they're rougher buildings, managers, they don't make property management would be horrible, right? You get the calls in the middle of the night, so the more calls and the more work you're going to get out of those buildings, people will say it's not worth the money. So, but if you got a good management, you just make sure your deposits are all, you don't want to buy something, and this is another thing you got to look at, is buy something that has all this deposit money down in the leases, and you don't transfer it at closing, and then people move out and says you owe me $1,000 deposit, and you're like, wait, where'd that come from?
Wow.
So you prorate the rents for the month, and then you also transfer deposits, and that's something that most title companies will say, hey, I don't see any deposits. Might save your butt on it, but technically they're not supposed to. So if your agent doesn't know what he's doing and you don't know what you're doing, you could be stuck with everybody's deposit money that can get real expensive real quick.
Now let's start finishing this up. Let me ask you this. What do you think that's going to happen with the commercial sector here? Your opinion. This is not set in stone. What is your thoughts?
Right? Like, we were just on a conference today about this. If anybody says one thing or another, it's a total guess. Okay. I tell you, things look good as we sit because we had that stimulus package come out. That really helped the economy. Now the second wave of virus, if people start shutting down again, we don't get another package out, it could get ugly for us.
Really?
But the saving grace is most people bought these really good. There's still a lot of influx. I mean, I'd hate to be owning big Class A office buildings in New York or stuff like that, right? Like that's bad. Or maybe be sitting on a ton of retail right now on maybe the not best of tenants. So I think that it's way too early to tell. I think there's, like I said, there's some factors that will make that decision here in the next 6 months. But I see us really rebounding way better than we should, right? Like you shouldn't be able to rebound as quick and as good as we have when you shut down a world economy. But I am hopeful for the future of real estate in certain areas, maybe not as much, but I think that there's a big influx. I think you're going to see people working from home. The apartment buildings have always been going like crazy because there's just an abundance of millennials that were renting at those times, right? So even if we lose a lot of tenants or stuff, there was still a big demand for certain things. So I'm hopeful for a lot of things, but I think, either another stimulus or something needs to change. I think, you can't have people running at 50%, occupancy on their businesses and expect that the economy be okay with it.
Well, all I know is I hope this market crashes so I can buy some properties.
Right? Make some money again.
I have a quick question. I know I don't want to go off topic. You said Class A people that have their Class A,
not people,
but buildings. Mm-hmm. So why are they willing to, or why are they more maybe going to leave that building versus say a Class C?
Because it's a different. Because you're paying so much for it, right? Like there's certain people that should be in Class A buildings, and there's certain people that egos think they should be in Class A buildings.
Got it.
Right. So, for example, this brokerage we're in right now, we deal with very high-end net worth individuals. You walk in here and you'll see CEOs, athletes, actors. Yeah. We're a different thing.
Yeah.
We're still not in a Class A building, right? If anybody should, they should. But you see these other companies that don't deal with that clientele, but their egos think they need to be. So you're paying a very high premium for a building that do you need? Especially do you need now that most of your people don't want to come to an office? So that's why I say I would.
So they couldn't afford it, basically.
Afford it. And, some people, I mean, you go into downtown Summerlin, those guys have, a lot of those have 10, 15, 20,000 square feet of beautiful buildings. And if you got 25% of your workforce don't want to come back, that's an expensive overhead, right? And I'm not saying they're hurting at all. No. Just because you know the example, right? Like they got great tenants in there. You go into there, you see who needs what. Super high-end real estate REITs, attorneys, stuff like that need it. But there's a lot of buildings around town that have your average Joe lender in there that doesn't need to be in there, or, maybe a builder that doesn't need to be in there, right? Like there's just certain reasons why, there's going to be different areas. I mean, you look at warehouses right now, they're on fire.
Really?
Oh, yeah, they will be. Where you take something 10 years ago and try to sell them a warehouse, that was the ugly stepchild, right?
Really?
What about storage units, man?
Oh, same thing. Again, like I said, man, I could go on for 5 hours.
I know, I can keep going on. I love this stuff.
Yeah, and it's a whole different thing. But you really got to look at your area, what you're buying, you got to try to forecast it.
Gotcha.
Forecast what you're looking at, and I turned a lot of clients away this last 2 years because I knew that they were not set up. And again, I could go into a whole nother thing about how I look at people and how they're trying to open a business, and I don't think maybe once out of 20 times am I wrong where someone succeeds that I think they're not going to. But the majority of the time they're calling me a year later, get me out of this personal guarantee, get me out of this. So,
oh, wow.
There was a lot of businesses going on that shouldn't. And we needed a reset anyways, right? Yeah. Like it's been 10 years. It's been 20 years. Really.
Like hurry up, man. I want to get paid.
Like it's every 10 years we should be going through a little bit of a reset on everything from stocks to real estate. So
now if somebody wants to get started and they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you and get started?
You can give me a call. I'm pretty easy. TheAmidonGroup.com. It's got my information. You can find me on social media outlets. Colt Amidon. It's a pretty unique name. So you can just Google me. It's my cell. I'll give it out because I'm one of those people that will. 702-767-8666. And look, even if you're buying throughout the country, give us a call. We can line you up with somebody or, give you some pointers. But, it's like I said, Colt Amidon, super unique name. So
you out here now? You do Utah as well?
Yeah, it started up in Utah. Utah's a whole different market that's a little more stable. So
I mean, are you still going out there to do deals, or are you just mostly just focus on
mostly here? I mean, I do deals up there. It's honestly I started that during the pandemic.
Okay.
I was bored and found out that I was doing a lot of consulting work, and I ended up consulting a lot up in Utah. So went back to. Got a little team up there in Utah that handles it. So if you got Utah stuff, we definitely handle that.
Oh, that's cool.
I've got my own personal team up there. But, just reach out. Like I said, you can even hit Chakits up. He's got my info.
Yeah, I don't do commercial anyway, so you can have all the business.
Yeah, that's fine.
Make sure to go to the website. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get into financing. We're going to get in financing with Dan. We're going to find out exactly what's going on with this sector. So what's the deal with financing today, Dan?
Oh, a lot of good information over there. Colt got me all sidetracked. Buddy. Yeah. So right now rates, still hovering at the low threes, high twos. We saw actually we had a really good pricing on Tuesday. Actually, it was yesterday, and we lost some of that pricing today. A lot of it's because of the vaccine that's coming out, and as you know, once the vaccine comes out, it puts more hope into investors and consumer confidence, and that's really what's happening right now. Consumer confidence is starting to increase. Some of the things that came out this week so far. Yesterday we had the retail sales ex auto that came in worse than expected, so that does have a high impact on rates. Also, we have tomorrow coming out the Philadelphia Fed Index that's coming out tomorrow. That's going to have a high impact. So when you look at what's going on across really the globe with debt, right now we have a high amount of debt this year. A lot of it's because of COVID. $15 trillion this year in debt. Globally. And so, with all this stuff going on, we always look at consumer confidence. We always look at gross domestic product. We always look at these things as an indicator. And if this vaccine comes into play, 95%, is what they're saying that it's effective. All workers are going to be having this by 5 or 6 months from now. And so it does present consumer confidence, and it's going to put where investors are putting their money back into the stock market, back into other investments, and not into the bond market. And so what that's going to do is it's ultimately, at some point, rates may go higher. We're still at historic lows. This is kind of the thing where we're looking at of, is rates going to increase in the next few weeks? Probably not. But I think overall, we're going to start to see an increase, or we could see an increase in rates due to the fact that we have a lot of this data coming out. Stimulus package is something. They're talking about another one. We talked about that last week. That's going to be something to look at too, because ultimately what that's doing is it's driving the market.
Yeah.
And so overall, I also want to talk about pre-COVID. We had a lot of regulations going on with FHA buyers. A lot of these programs. They had a lot of heightened restrictions, and they're removing those restrictions. Now we can start to look at. We don't have the restrictions on the gift funds, right? If somebody's trying to gift you money, there's restrictions are pulled from that. Debt ratios can now go higher. Credit scores don't have to be as high as they were, let's say pre-COVID. Now you can get a loan 620, 640 without having all these extra regulations. That just passed. And so this is good information for everybody, because now that tells me that there's some consumer confidence going on, right? We see the economy, even though it's not fully recovered, there's talks of it going back into, us shutting down again. Well, if they're doing all these things, maybe that's an indication that they don't think that this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? They wouldn't be pulling these things back of restrictions and all the things that's going on. So what I'm coming out and stating to everybody is, if you're trying to get a home mortgage right now, rates are still low. Take advantage of them while you can. And all of these extra restrictions and overlays that you talk about with these loans, they're going to go away.
I mean, what are the rates right now?
Cash out refis now?
Oh, yeah.
All those kind of went on hold. Huh?
Well, we did cash out. I mean, here's the thing. We do cash out, but there's heightened restrictions.
Okay.
Some of the cash out refis, though, they wanted you to have a certain amount of equity in the property, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's weird, because banks will look at it. They'll just pass the risk to you through the rate.
Yeah.
So you're typically going to have a higher rate through a cash out refi. And so for us, all of these things as lenders, now what does that do with the down payment assistance now, where those credit scores are decreasing? It's going to open up more opportunities for people where I think they were really pushed out of the market. Some people will be pushed back into the market because of this happening.
Can you explain the cash out refinance to the audience and what those rates would be if they did that?
Well, it depends. I mean, a lot of that is dependent on what occupancy. Is it a primary, a secondary, or investment home? Okay. It's also dependent on what your credit score is. It's also dependent on how much equity you have in the property. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of layers or factors that come into it. But ultimately, what people are doing with these cash out refis is they're paying off debts. They have student loans, car loans, things like that. They're getting cheaper money using the equity in the property, pivoting and getting it and basically repositioning themselves.
So you're saying that you don't think rates are going to go up?
I think they will.
Really?
I don't think they're going to go up really, crazy, but I don't think that they're going to go the other direction. I do think the Fed is still going to see and monitor and still buy into the bonds and do the things they've been doing until they see, is this COVID really stabilized? Right?
Yeah.
Is this whole position with the economy stabilized? And I think once they see that, I do eventually see that they may slowly go up. Do I think it's going to go up to the 5 and 5.5% like it was? I don't know. We'll see. The market might not be able to sustain that.
You guys don't think this is an artificial market based upon what's going on? I mean,
it's been artificial because
it's just crazy. We're printing all this money.
Yeah.
Unemployment's 15% here. What is nationwide? I think we're about 10%.
Although that is coming down.
Well, it is.
It is coming down. But the thing is this: we're already in an artificial market. What it tells me is that there is a formula here.
Yeah.
Where it's not a save all, but the Fed and what they're doing and how they're manipulating buying bonds, how some of the data, the news that comes out. You have stuff that's going overseas, when you see geopolitical news, things like that. All of these things going on play a huge factor in what happens with rates, what happens with consumer confidence. And I think they figured out a formula to really manipulate either way. If the rates go down and the economy needs to be, stimulated, boom, we got a stimulus package coming out. They keep the bonds, they keep purchasing bonds. Even though it's not the highest amount that they were at one point, they're still doing it on a somewhat large scale. So they're still doing these things behind the scenes to really drive and keep the rates down.
Do you think because the feds are printing out so much money and money's so cheap to borrow, and all this money that people are saving, right, due to inflation, you're losing this money. Do you think they're taking this money and putting it back into tangible assets as far as like real estate, and that's the reason why we see like a lot of commercial real estate and a lot of investors are just like buying in lower areas like Las Vegas?
I mean, they could. I mean, I don't know. It would. For me, it's. I think they're just, the whole point of view right now is where is the money going, and also is COVID. What is going to happen with this? Because I think with everything that's going on with the uncertainty, I think a lot of the stuff that's going to be taking place, including into this next year, is can we stabilize? Can the economy stabilize? I think they're more worried about are people going to start doing back to where they're taking all the paper towels and stuff, and they're taking all that and they're not spending their money. And what's that going to do? It's going to drive our economy down. So because we're not gross domestic product starting to go down. So I really think that what's going to happen is, yes, they may be doing that, but I don't know how they would be pumping up that sector.
Because the feds are adjusting 2% of interest this year, right? The problem is that you got $1 million. That's $20,000. I mean, you're just losing money. You're hemorrhaging by saving money. And that's what I'm thinking. I mean, people are like, I'm getting into tangible assets, and they got to dump their money into something, right?
Well, people in general, yeah. But I also think people are just saving their money. Like, I don't know if people really have an idea what to do, because, like, look, let's put it in perspective.
That is also a good point, because they don't know which direction the economy is going.
And there's not a lot of inflation right now, right?
No, it's hovering 2%.
Yeah, that's why inflation is going to play a key role if interest rates stay low, right? Like, there's not major inflation, so that's why I think we're going to see a good year run of low interest rates, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to go crazy, but I do think they
eighth and a point. Let's just say.
Yeah, well, maybe up to maybe half a point, something like that.
Oh hell no! You better buy right now.
But no, no.
People don't realize. Okay, I'm 37. I've been doing this since 18. Okay?
Yeah.
When I got into real estate, if you got a 7.5% interest rate,
that was a great deal.
Like amazing, right?
I know.
Like I sat there and I remember buying something, I got like 5% interest rate, and I'm like,
dude, I'm a rock star.
Yeah, just robbed it. So when you're hearing 2.8,
people getting greedy, dude.
Yeah, people, it's not going to get way less.
I think
like,
though too,
people misunderstand that the feds are at zero, right? They don't realize it can go negative, and it has.
You don't want to go negative.
No.
Yeah, but it could, right? It doesn't. It's not going to affect that. You're not going to get a 1% interest rate as a house. So when people like hear that, I hear that all the time. I heard I can get a loan for 0%. No,
that's not you.
Yeah.
Here's the thing too, is that I did it last week where we were talking about, I don't think it's probably going to go over 3.3. I think is what the projected, like 3.375.
That's still good rate crazy. Though, man.
But the thing is this: can we even go past that, and could we sustain ourselves? You got to realize, when you're talking about those rates, that was more of a freelance type market. Yeah. Right. People were really making investments based upon not having the Fed and the government have their hands so much into it. Now, because of what happened in 2007, 8, and 9, they're completely involved. They're completely have a huge impact on really what happened. So I think looking at rates, even if you're at 3, you didn't miss the train, but I can tell you that, is it going to be historically low? I don't know. I mean, I think we were like at 2.5, 2.625 on a 30-year fix, which is
crazy,
phenomenal, right? But that was very, very concise, short window, couple of weeks.
It's crazy and that's why things still sell, right? Is because you can carry debt. When this went down, I told my wife, I go, I don't know if you're going to see a paycheck come from me for a year, right? Like I thought this was going, and it has hurt the commercial. There's not a lot of transactions, but what I found is we've done, multiple deals. They're $1 million, 500,000 to $1 million. But because debt is so cheap, even on commercial side, they're historically low. It's like, well, do I go lease or can I just go buy something and be cheaper into my payments after down payment than a lease?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing. You start looking at like fourplexes. Well, the cap rate can go out the window at some point. You start looking at it as the cash on cash return because the interest rates are so low.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a great thing that I think you guys as an investment group, like you guys are having record breaking years. I mean, you got to take advantage of this. And
I mean, it's a catch-22. I mean, you're making the money, but then sometimes in this case, it doesn't make any sense to buy anything.
Right.
Because when you're used to 15, 16, 18% returns, 10 years ago, it's hard to swallow that pill when it's only a 3%, because I could take that 3% and I can, get something else, a lot higher than that. You know what I'm saying?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, even like we're talking about rates can go up, right? Like 3.3% or 3.5%. Like I think especially people our age group, right? Like they don't know any better.
Yeah.
They don't know what our parents went through in the 80s where it's 18, 19%, right? So I think that the younger group doesn't realize when I hear Dan say 3.3, like they could go up to 3.3, like, people are like, oh, like that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's just amazing.
I think that's the average too. I mean, it could go up higher.
And just the eighth of a point difference, and I think it's more psychologic because when we're hovering around 4, people wanted to be like, I'm at 3.9. I'm like, dude, you're only eighth of a point. You're only saving $20.
Right.
Close the thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's just nuts because, like I said, I remember if you got anything sub 7, you're a rock star back then.
Sub 7. Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people really think that, they're going to just wait, and they could. I mean, I don't know. There's no, right
or wrong answer.
No, I think what people are thinking is what we went through a decade ago. I mean, that was a perfect storm of a lot of stupidity, right? And I think people sit there and say, well, I'll just wait till this thing crashes. If it crashes, we crashed. Like 50, 60% on property back then. I mean, you were around back then. We were talking earlier. I mean, selling properties you could buy stuff. I remember I sold a property. Guess what? Take a guess what the lowest price property I've ever sold in my life.
Probably like 120.
40,000.
$7,500.
Dang, 7,000?
Somebody, a bank, hey, can you get rid of this for me? What is it?
Man, that's pocket change.
Townhome.
$7,000.
Townhome full of mold. Right? Townhome full of mold. The guy put like $5,000 to get the mold out.
Oh my gosh.
They wouldn't allow me to buy it. I'm like, but yeah.
Should have your wife buy it.
Right? Like, but how crazy is that? It was over by the Manhattan condos across, what's that? Paradise Palms, whatever. But like, I just laugh. Like, so I think people's mindset is, well, just go back to what 2009 was.
And I don't think we're going back that low, right?
2009? Oh, I don't know.
2007.
We had 2007, market crash.
That commercial's a shadow market, right?
Yeah.
So 2009 was, our doomsday.
So when the market crashes, correct me if I'm wrong, commercial's the first to go.
It usually, in my opinion, follows.
It follows.
Correct.
Why is that?
Right? Just because, and people argue with me all day long, but because what drives the commercial market is people out there being able to buy stuff, right? Go to the bar, go to the grocery store. So when that starts going down, and that's what this is why the unknown, right, is because what happened in 2007 was a reset because of the economy.
Yeah.
This one's different. This is a reset because of a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's unknown. But, I don't know. I mean, it's a shadow market, but it follows right behind.
Yeah.
Not that much longer. So
now, Dan, do you have any final words, anything that you want to plug in?
Oh, no.
Come on. How's about the website?
Oh, man, they know how to get a hold of you.
If you guys want to get started on the loan process, that's probably where you're going to want to start. What's the name of that website? Because the website I got on here is people.rate.com. Is that correct, Dan?
Well, it's if you put Vegas Loan Guru, I have a redirect.
Okay.
Because
Vegas Loan Gurus.
Yeah, before it was crazy because it was like so many different letters and //.
Yeah.
So, make it easier.
Make it easier.
Gotcha. So that's definitely where you're going to go ahead and get the process started. And do you have any final words, Dan, before we...
No, man, I appreciate Colt's time here.
Dude, Colt's
good talking to you guys.
He's on
it.
Fun. Hell yeah, it was. So. Now, Colt, what was the name of that website again that you had?
AmidonGroup.com.
Where is it? I don't even know where it's at.
Who knows? Amidon Group. You can find me on social media.
Yeah, I'll have a link in the description.
I'm going to start
below.
doing more social media stuff. So
you got to. Well,
I'm horrible with it, but there's a lot of stuff that, like I said, we could go on for hours about each sector.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to LV Home Experts. Again, if you guys are interested in commercial, just go ahead and click on the link in the description below. I'll have Colt's contact information, also Dan's contact information too as well. I really do appreciate it. If you guys have not had a chance to subscribe to this channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up too as well. That definitely helps out the algorithm. And also hit that notification button. We are out.